Great pleasure right now to welcome to our book talk segment man who's written a very fascinating book about something that happened 75 years ago, coming up in early June. It is the 75th anniversary of the Battle of Midway, and this story of a heroic pilot called Never Call Me a Hero, a legendary American dive bomber pilot remembers the Battle of Midway. His name was Jack Dusty Cleese, and we're joined today by the author of the book, one of the co-authors, Timothy Orr, on the telephone. And Tim, good to talk with you. How are you today?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Had a chance to read through the book. Fascinating story about a man who lived to be 100 years old. I guess he sadly passed away. I don't know if he's sadly, but 100 years old isn't a good run, but he passed away last year. But you wrote this book with him, telling this amazing story of a man who almost single-handedly, I guess, turned the tide in the Battle of Midway, didn't he?
That's correct. He probably would be embarrassed by all of the attention he gets in this book, but I definitely agree. He played a pivotal role in the battle. He's part of this squadron, two squadrons, in fact, that kind of arrive at the right moment above the Japanese fleet on June 4th, 1942. And Dusty, not only does he hit, a Japanese carrier that morning, but he gets another Japanese carrier in the afternoon, and then a cruiser on June 6th, 1942. So he's one of the most instrumental pilots in the air during those 3 days of battle. And most historians like to argue that the Battle of Midway was something of a turning point in the tide of the Pacific War, when the Americans win this big victory and get a chance to go on the offensive. And if you'd like to believe that a single life matters in war, this is a good book to substantiate that idea.
Yeah, I mean, you read the history now of World War II. If you really get into it, America obviously came out on top on that, but there was some doubt at one point. I mean, it wasn't as easy as people may have thought back then. And battles like this were huge turning points, particularly Midway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a dark time for the United States and really for the other allies that were fighting in the Pacific. I mean, not only had the U.S. fleet been kind of wrecked at Pearl Harbor in December 1941, but they had also lost Guam, Wake Island, and then a big army surrenders in the Philippines in May 1942. So it was all a sequence of devastating losses, and Midway was the first real kind of discernible victory, a decisive one. And not only did it kind of help turn around American strategic initiatives, but also kind of got vengeance for what had happened in those other defeats, because the 4 Japanese carriers that are sunk on June 4th are 4 of the 6 that are deployed at Pearl Harbor 6 months earlier.
Right. Before we get into some of the specifics of what Captain Cleese did, how did you get involved with the story? How did you meet or get in touch with Dusty Cleese?
Kind of by chance, years ago, back in 2010, my wife and I, we had just moved to Norfolk, and we were looking ahead to what would be the 70th anniversary of the Battle of Midway, and we wanted to bring a Midway veteran to Norfolk to speak about his experiences. And so we kind of put a call out through what's called the Battle of Midway Roundtable, which keeps in touch with veterans to see if anyone would be interested. And even at those early days, we'd actually kind of knew a little bit about Dusty Cleese because he had appeared on a History Channel show a few years earlier called Battle 360. It's kind of nice program that does a documentary of the experiences of the USS Enterprise and its veterans. And lo and behold, he actually called my wife and was interested in doing this. And, we kind of just got to know him because he would call occasionally because he loved to just talk and tell all about his stories. And at some point, my wife and I said to each other, we might really want to do a book about him, because if we let this opportunity go, he tells us all this and we never really write it down, we're going to end up regretting it. So we eventually asked him if he wanted to do a memoir, and he agreed to it. And so we went out to his place in San Antonio several times, recorded his stories, got a look at all his letters, his logbooks, and just to construct his tale of his life, specifically focusing on World War II. But he was fun to work with. He made historians work very easy.
I should say Tim is a associate professor of military history at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, and your wife is the education director at the Naval Museum in Norfolk. So that's kind of your background, studying military history.
That's right. I think working together with my wife on this made the project easier as well. We kind of were able to pool our knowledge, both academic and public history, together to really put together a book that we thought would not only be informative, but kind of an interesting read for the general public. So people who don't know much about Battle of Midway can get a kind of a nice introductory view of it, and then people who know a lot about it already can get kind of a new view from a person who really didn't get a chance to publish much about it until now.
Now, Captain Cleese, like you mentioned, he was forthcoming in telling you these stories, but kind of the title of the book says, "Don't call me a hero, never call me a hero." So a lot of those men and women that served in World War II, you hear that they didn't really want to talk a lot about what happened. So he did open up to you, though, obviously, to tell you the story. Was he reluctant at all to get into the details of it, or how did he approach it?
He was never reluctant to get into the details of it, but we'll tell you this, that the title of the book is kind of our promise to him, because he was very modest and kind of shy. He didn't want a whole lot of praise. And the way he kind of approached the project was that if he told his story, he told it thoroughly, then he would do justice to who he thought were the true heroes of the Pacific War, the men who died and did not live to come back and experience kind of a peaceful post-war world. And so he thought he owed it to them to tell the story. And so they were the true heroes in his eyes. And so the title of the book is kind of our promise to him. He always said, never call me a hero, but always refer to those men who died as heroes.
Right.
So that's the reason for the title. Now, as for how we judge Dusty, well, I leave that to the reader to determine whether he's a hero or not. I think he's kind of a hero in my eyes for what he did, because he had that ability to summon courage, especially in these dark hours of the early months of the Pacific War. And he just did kind of an amazing thing by being a dive bomber pilot and fighting in those battles.
When you think of it, I mean, the planes then, obviously, aviation was still pretty young in the 40s. Those type of planes, weren't the best made at times, right? They were kind of put together in a hurry, a lot of them. So to do that kind of maneuvering, that took a lot of guts, just to pull out of that dive at the last minute, or else he would have been crashing himself, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just remarkable to think about dive bombing as a tactic used to destroy an enemy ship. It is an incredibly terrifying experience, because you start, about 4 miles high, and then you plunge nose downward, almost 80 degrees towards the earth. In about 50 seconds, you're going to, careen towards your target. And you have to be able to size it up and aim your bomb to where you got to release it. And you release it at the last possible second. And you got to pull out of it, which is like a 8G pull out, right? And you got to avoid the anti-aircraft fire and the fighters and your own bomb blast. It is just like a terrifying roller coaster ride of epic proportion. I can't imagine doing something like that. But to him, man, we talked about it. He said, it was just nothing. And it's just remarkable that World War II veterans think that way. But they're like, it was nothing. That's all it was to him, just what he'd been trained to do. And he was proud of it.
And he had a great life, obviously, living to 100. That's pretty good. I mean, he's married to his wife for over 60 years, right, before she passed away. So what did he do after he got out of the Army? What kind of work did he do?
Well, he initially worked for kind of a Navy ballistics laboratory in a place called Rocket Center, West Virginia, where he helped design propulsion systems for Navy missiles. And he was at that for about 3 years, and then he just simply called that quits and worked as a teacher at Berkeley Springs High School in West Virginia, teaching chemistry and mathematics. Right. So he did that for about 10 years, and then kind of retired from public life afterwards. And so he was fairly quiet about his World War II career when he went back to teaching. You'll kind of see in the foreword, which is written by his youngest daughter, Jill, that she went to this high school where her father taught, and the other students would kind of like try to figure out what he was about. They eventually learned he was this kind of naval hero, and they called him the Commodore. That was his nickname around school. But he didn't try to like bring it up whenever he could. It was just sort of like a thing, and but eventually the West Virginians, they found out about it, and there's some local news articles back in the 70s on him. So it was interesting.
Definitely the greatest generation, aptly named, and he represented it well. I know my dad, he served in World War II. All those men and women, hats off to them, but hats off to you for writing this book, again, called Never Call Me a Hero. A legendary American dive bomber pilot remembers the Battle of Midway. And Timothy Orr's been our guest. Do you have a website, Timothy? People get more information about this book?
Yeah, we do. We have a Facebook page, simply Facebook slash Never Call Me a Hero. Not only do we have just kind of updates about the book, we have a bunch of photographs of Dusty's life that aren't published in the book, so you can kind of see them in good detail. We also have a few videos we posted of interviews that Dusty did before he died. So if you want to hear his voice, see the man, and listen to him describe the Battle of Midway, you can go to our Facebook page and click the link.
Great. Tim, pleasure talking to you. Hopefully we can do it again. Great job on the book, and we'll talk to you down the road. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Stan Brock. 30 years ago, I formed Remote Area Medical to help people overseas. But then we found generations of families in America isolated by poverty from the health care they need. Together, we can take dental, vision, and medical help to 1 million adults and their kids, right here at home in the United States of America.
If you'd like to order the book we're talking about, please go to DougMilesMedia.com and enter the author's name in the Amazon search box. Thank you for listening. Please come back soon for more conversations here at DougMilesMedia.com. This has been a presentation of Doug Miles Media, all rights reserved. You can listen to or download previous programs at iTunes, Stitcher.com, or DougMilesMedia.com.